In today's horror retrospective, we're going to take a look at possibly one of the greatest horror masterpieces ever created. This movie is not just a film, it's a cornerstone of horror and a visual revolution in storytelling. Today we're looking at the silent masterpiece. The creative force behind Nosferatu coming to the screen was director Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau, better known as F.W. Murnau. A visionary filmmaker, he had studied art history before transitioning to cinema, and his films were known for their striking visual compositions and innovative techniques. Murnau believed that the camera should tell the story, often using symbolic imagery and evocative settings to immerse the audience in the narrative. But Murnau wasn't working alone. Nosferatu was produced by Prana Film, a short-lived company founded by Enrico Deichmann and Albin Grau. Grau, an artist and occultist, was particularly instrumental in shaping the film's eerie tone and its visual style. He claimed that the idea for Nosferatu came from a chilling story he heard while serving in the German army during World War I. According to Grau, a Serbian farmer told him that his father had risen from the dead as a vampire, sparking Grau's fascination with the supernatural. Henrik Galen was tasked with writing the screenplay inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, this would come back to hurt them once the film was released. The plot to Nosferatu is pretty much the same as Dracula, but with locations and name changes. But for those who haven't heard the tale of Nosferatu, allow me to fill that in for you. The story follows Hutter, a young man sent to Transylvania to sell property to the mysterious Count Orlok. Once there, Hutter discovers that Orlok is a vampire, an undead creature with a thirst for blood. Orlok travels to Hutter's hometown, spreading terror and a deadly plague. Meanwhile, Hutter's wife, Ellen, becomes the key to stopping the monster, using her own life as bait to lure Orlok into the sunlight so he can be destroyed. The making of Nosferatu was as eerie and groundbreaking as the film itself. Director F.W. Murnau blended the production of German expressionism with a sense of realism that made the film's horrors feel disturbingly tangible. Unlike many films of its time, which relied heavily on elaborate studio sets, Nosferatu was filmed on locations across Germany, with a few key scenes shot in Slovakia. The choice of real-world locations gave the film an uncanny authenticity. For example, the medieval town of Wismar, with its centuries-old architecture, served as the backdrop for Hutter and Ellen's home. Meanwhile, the haunting shots of Orlok's castle were filmed at Orava Castle in Slovakia, a remote and crumbling fortress that seemed to embody the vampire's decayed and menacing presence. These locations weren't just set dressing, they became characters in their own right, adding to the film's oppressive and foreboding atmosphere. Murnau's use of natural landscapes also helped to set Nosferatu apart from other movies being made at the time. The dark forests, jagged mountains, and winding rivers create a sense of isolation and danger, as if the characters are stepping into a realm where the rules of nature no longer apply. This decision to shoot on location was unusual for the time and added a sense of scale and realism that still resonates with audiences today. One of the most unforgettable aspects of the film is Max Schreck's portrayal of Count Orlok. His performance is legendary, literally. Schreck's gaunt, corpse-like appearance, with his elongated fingers, sunken eyes, and rodent-like features, was achieved through meticulous makeup and costuming. His exaggerated movements and slow, deliberate gestures gave Orlok an otherworldly quality, as if he was a predator stalking his prey. But here's where things get interesting. Rumors swirled for decades that Max Schreck might not have been human at all. Some claimed he was an actual vampire, cast by Murnau to add authenticity to the role. While this myth has been debunked, it's a testament to the power of his performance that audiences could believe such a wild story. This legend even inspired the 2000 film Shadow of the Vampire, which imagined Schreck as a real-life vampire. The technical challenges of filming Nosferatu also pushed the boundaries of what cinema could achieve. One of the most iconic sequences is Orlok's journey aboard the ghostly ship. These scenes were shot using a full-scale ship and a combination of practical effects such as lighting and fog to create the illusion of a cursed voyage. The ship became a floating coffin, carrying death and plague to Hudder's town. Murnau's use of shadows and light also deserves special mention. In a time before advanced special effects, the director relied on creative lighting to make Orlok's shadow appear larger than life. These chilling silhouettes, creeping along walls and doorways, became one of the film's most enduring images, symbolizing the inescapable presence of evil. Nosferatu was a product of innovation. The film was shot using orthochromatic film stock, which captured light in a way that heightened contrasts and gave the imagery its dreamlike, almost surreal quality. Murnau also used time-lapse photography, such as the rising sun as the film's climax, to emphasize the natural forces at play. These techniques were groundbreaking for the time and demonstrated Murnau's mastery of visual storytelling. Nosferatu premiered on March 4th, 1922, at the Marmorsaal Marble Hall in the Berlin Zoological Garden, one of the city's most prestigious venues at the time. The event was a grand affair, with the filmmakers hoping to impress audiences and critics alike. This wasn't just another silent movie. It was pitched as an artistic achievement, a chilling exploration of the supernatural. The film was released during a period when silent cinema was rapidly evolving. Audiences were beginning to embrace film as more than just mere entertainment. It was becoming an art form in its own right. Nosferatu stood out from its contemporaries with its haunting atmosphere and groundbreaking use of location shooting. Unlike many films of its day, which were shot entirely on studio sets, Nosferatu transported audiences to real-world locations, enhancing its eerie realism. But the release of Nosferatu was overshadowed by controversy. As we mentioned earlier, Prana Film had adapted Bram Stoker's Dracula without obtaining the necessary rights from his estate. Florence Stoker, the author's widow, was furious when she learned of the unauthorized adaptation and immediately filed a lawsuit against Prana Film. In 1925, the court ruled in her favor, ordering that all existing copies of Nosferatu be destroyed. Florence Stoker's victory seemed to spell the end for the film, and Prana Film, already struggling financially, declared bankruptcy shortly after the lawsuit. This left Nosferatu as the company's only production. Count Orlok, much like the vampire he represents, proved impossible to kill. Despite the court order, copies of the film had already been distributed across Europe. Bootleg prints surfaced in various countries, ensuring that Nosferatu would live on. In fact, it's thanks to these unauthorized copies that the film survives to this day. Restoration efforts over the decades have painstakingly pieced together what remains, allowing modern audiences to experience the film as it was originally intended. Despite the legal troubles, Nosferatu found an audience abroad. In France, it was praised for its artistic innovation, and in the United States, it became a cult favorite among horror enthusiasts. Nosferatu is more than just an old silent film. It's the beating heart of the horror genre. Its influence has crept into nearly every corner of cinema and pop culture, like the shadows of Count Orlok himself. The film's imagery has become iconic. Count Orlok's angular, grotesque appearance, with his sunken eyes, elongated fingers, and his rat-like teeth, remains one of the most terrifying and unique interpretations of the vampire. Unlike the suave, aristocratic Dracula popularized later, Orlok represents the vampire as a primal, pestilent force. This contrast laid the groundwork for countless creative reinterpretations of the vampire mythos, from the gothic romance of Interview with the Vampire to the modern, monstrous iterations in films like 30 Days of Night and From Dusk Till Dawn. Even more remarkable is how Nosferatu pioneered techniques that became staples of the horror filmmaking era. Its use of shadow and light to create suspense, The eerie atmosphere of its real-world locations and the chilling physicality of Max Schreck's performance set the bar for generations of filmmakers. These techniques influenced early classics like Frankenstein and Dracula in the 1930s, and continues to inspire directors like Guillermo del Toro, Robert Eggers, and even Tim Burton. Speaking of inspiration, Nosferatu has been directly remade and reimagined many times. Perhaps the most famous homage is Werner Herzog's 1979 film Nosferatu the Vampire, a stunning reinterpretation that modernized the original while staying true to its haunting spirit. Herzog's version even brought the character of Count Orlok back into the mainstream, solidifying his place as a cinematic legend. And in recent years, Robert Eggers, the director of The Lighthouse and the Witch, has been developing his own remake of Nosferatu, which is scheduled to be released within the next 7 days, proves that even a century later, the story continues to captivate audiences and filmmakers alike. Nosferatu is a timeless fear of the unknown, for the way that it captured the fragility of humanity in the face of darkness. The film remains a masterpiece in every aspect, from filmmaking all the way to watching it. It remains as the greatest horror movie ever made, and it's not just about the scares. It shows that a horror movie can show emotion and tell us stories on how to confront our fears. If you haven't seen Nosferatu and you are a horror fan, this is the movie you need to watch, and watch it soon. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on if you've seen this masterpiece. Until next time, stay critical, stay scared.